Hey, it's lunch hour, and we're going to have a great conversation today on how long does it take to get perfect technique on your strokes. I think that this is going to be a good, interesting topic. I'm really excited to have on probably the best person that we could have on possibly for this, Dr. Mark Kovacs. So, without any further ado, let's bring in Mark. Mark, how are you doing today?
Good day, mate. It's me, Mark Kovacs. I'm the biggest expert around. No one can hold a candle to what I got in store, so I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks a lot for having me, mate.
Um, Maribon, you're not Dr. Markovacs. That's not a good
I
impersonation.
I hijacked the stream. Mark couldn't make it today. We all love Mark, obviously, but I just really wanted to be on instead of him. So I just said, "Hey, Mark, please don't come, and I'll do it." And he said, "All right, I have 10 billion things to do besides this," and so he let me come on. So I'm really excited to talk today, and I hope that you'll enjoy me just as much as Mark.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, it's always great to have Maribon, and Maribon actually is bailing me out today. Mark Kovacs couldn't make. He says he'll definitely reschedule with me though, but couldn't make today's call. But I didn't want to cancel on you guys, especially because I do think this is a fun, interesting topic. We can all learn a lot. Look at Sir Gordon Tanner saying, "Great lunch tea time topic." Pete and Dr. Mark K. Well, yeah. Let's see. Lousy impression of Ozzy. So you've already been.
I'm sorry, Mark. Please
what did
don't
you
kill
guys?
me.
What did you guys think of Maribon's? All right, cool. All right, so we see that people are active. You guys see my new like? How cool does this look? I figure we could use this today, Maribon. What do you think? You like it?
It looks really nice. I really appreciate the upgrade in tech. It looks nice, and looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
yeah. This is like the new TennisCon 8 studios, if you will.
Mm,
All right,
love it.
William Peck is on. Great to see you guys. This is going to be fun. So, welcome to the live stream. And today we have a really fascinating topic, and it's how long does it take to make perfect strokes? And we'll be exploring these perspectives together, hopefully giving you guys some really good tips. And, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today, not only transfer to tennis, but whether it's golf or music or anything that requires some amount of skill to achieve mastery. So, um, first of all, Maribon, what are your thoughts? Did you do some research on this today? What have you found out so far?
You know, Peter, I was actually very glad that you asked me to be on this stream. Obviously, Dr. Kovacs would have been incredible, but I really enjoyed doing performing research on this topic because I checked out a few videos of kind of what tennis coaches thought about the subject, how many repetitions, etc. But then I found some really good articles, and one in particular was a fellow who he researched a ton of different scientific articles himself and then made these laws and conclusions on them. So, yeah, just a really fun topic. And I think there's a lot of things that we can identify for players to help them be more efficient in their process on how to develop their stroke. So, really excited about this topic.
Yeah. Also, you guys get your questions ready. And what do you guys think? Like, how long does it take to make a perfect stroke? Is it possible? Is it possible for an adult to learn perfect technique, or is that something that only really juniors can do and have the time to develop? Um, I want to start with you first of all, Maribon. What do you think? What age did you start playing tennis?
I started when I was about 7. Yeah. Yeah, about 7. And I hit with my dad and had fun, but obviously, I developed some bad habits that, there's a couple that still, even to this day, just trying to kind of perfect those and fix those. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Great question. Pete says, Gordon. Well, Gordon, what do you think? So the first question is it possible for adults to try and learn how to hit the ball perfectly? I mean, pretty much if a junior gets serious about tennis, they want to perfect their technique. They want to be fully developed as tennis players and reach their full potential. So I just want to see what you think. It's hard to switch grips and habits. That's true. It is hard when you develop something. When something gets developed, it's hard to kind of undevelop it and then switch it, which I think
Yeah.
a lot of, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and why a lot of adults have trouble, making change. There's a real reason for that. Um, Here's a good question right off the bat is what's the best way to switch from a one-hand backhand to a two-hand backhand? I am a senior player. Any thoughts on that, Maribon? Then I'll give you my thoughts.
Yeah, I think it just takes a ton of isolated practice. I think we'll kind of expound upon these, that more. But yeah, just start by getting a really good coach, instruction there, and really, practicing first in a closed environment, and then just progressing from there. But it's going to take a ton of deliberate practice. So I don't feel like it's too different from changing, stuff in other strokes. But yeah, I just also as a little story is I did the opposite. I played two-handed backhand for many years, and then a few years after college, I fell in love with the one-hander, and I went on the wall and actually just practiced. The key mistake I made was not having a coach. I just tried to scrounge some videos together, and then I practiced on the wall. I think maybe for like 3 days in like a 7-day span. And then I thought, oh, I'm ready now. Feels good. And then I started hitting with a friend, and then it was terrible. And I could barely hit a ball in on my one hander. And then from there, I just gave up. So obviously did not follow the proper process there. I hadn't even started tennis files at that point, but yeah, there's my kind of reverse experience there.
Yeah, just a quick tip if you're going to switch to a two-handed backhand, I would say do a lot of developing on the offhand. The more you can get coordinated
Yeah.
with that and start to feel the ball. So I would actually get good at an offhanded forehand. That'd be part of my practicing as well as some other things. John says practicing the right way, very crucial, very easy to practice mistakes
Hmm.
and never improve. I think that's very wise. So actually, first thing I'm going to do here on the board, I'm just going to show you guys. Come on. Uh, I think that this book is worth a big read here, The Talent Code. There's also a book called Outliers, which talks about the 10,000 hour rule. So I'm going to go through. I just basically asked, have you played around with Chat GPT, Maribon?
I sure have, thanks to you mainly.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
really
yeah.
good tool.
So, I mean, what ChatGPT is, it's AI, but what it actually does is it scrubs the internet and it basically finds, for the most part, true information. Sometimes it can come with some stuff that isn't, but it basically scours the internet looking for information to your questions, then comes up with the most common answers. That's pretty much what it does. So, I asked ChatGPT, well, how long does it take in tennis, golf, and music? Because I consider these three activities very similar in that it's a skill. I think that's the difference between pickleball and tennis is tennis is like picking up an instrument. It's like trying to learn the piano or the guitar. And so it's going to take you a while to kind of get it to do it properly. Where pickleball, certainly like the pros who are playing pickleball right now, they're outstanding athletes and they have great pickleball technique and they're amazing pickleball players. I probably couldn't even get a point off of them. I mean, they're awesome. So I'm not knocking the sport, but the beauty of their game, I guess, is that you can pick it up and you can start playing the first day. If you watch
Yeah.
the final between Alcaraz and Djokovic at Wimbledon in the last 2 years and you got inspired and wanted to go play and you're like, Maribon, let's say we never played, we're like, hey, that was fun. That was fun to watch. Let's go play. The first thing we're going to want to do is imitate their serve and put it in play. And we're going to throw the ball up and quickly realize we have no idea what we're doing. We don't even know how to start a point. So, I mean, I think that's like the biggest difference between, um, tennis and pickleball. Same thing with golf. If you watch the Masters on TV and you see them drive, that'd be the first thing I want to do is I want to drive that thing 200, 300 yards straight. You pick up a golf club, you realize within a couple of seconds, I don't know how to do this. Like, one's maybe okay, the next one's terrible. So here are the studies. Studies suggest that around 10,000 repetitions of a specific stroke to achieve muscle memory and proper technique. This concept aligns with the 10,000 hour rule popularized by Malcolm Gladwell. First of all, have you guys heard the 10,000 hour rule. Has anybody read the book Outliers? I read the Talent Code. I haven't picked up Outliers yet. I want to see if anybody else has, though. So let's
Yeah.
see. Gordon says ChatGPT, very useful, but also flawed. Definitely flawed. Absolutely. Let's see here. Always good to have cues, lift, open in progression. Okay. So,
I got a question about that one, Peter. Oh, unless you
yeah.
want to keep going with the
No, go
stats, and
ahead.
then I can.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
So the 10,000 hour rule, I definitely, I've read about that and I understand it, but I'm wondering, how does the 10,000 repetitions align to the 10,000 hour rule? Because there might be some, mathematicians here, and they're kind of wondering, like, if you just divide that, like, it's like 1 rep per hour, or is there some other, is it just like the principles that it aligns with? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I think if you want to learn something and master something quickly, like the 10,000 hour rule or the 10,000 rep rule, whether it's reps or hours, whatever you think, I think the key is it's got to be done close together.
Yes.
I'm not
Hmm.
saying like every
I
day,
agree. Hmm.
but you can't take too much time off, because if
That's
you're
right.
like, you're doing a lot of reps one day and then you take like a week or two off, then you go back and you do it. So if you're trying to learn something new, I suggest you think of it like you're on a very strict diet and you have to lose like 100 pounds. Like if you want to have a new serve, a new forehand, a new, like, don't even worry about how many reps. Just go, I got to be doing this stuff a lot and back to back to back days. And it doesn't even mean you have to, I don't personally think you have to do it hour after hour after hour either. I don't think it, I think it's more about the consistency, and the time in between your next practice is even more important than how many hours you're practicing.
Yes.
Of course, if you have the time to practice a lot of hours as well, then that's even better, as long as you're making those practice hours good and productive and you're not losing your focus. Um, let's see here. Golf. In golf, similar research indicates that mastering a swing can take 10,000 hours of focused practice. Professional golfers often practice for several hours a day for years. Musicians, particularly those with instruments like the piano or violin, which is kind of how I view picking up a tennis racket, also adhere to the 10,000 hour rule. It is said that professional musicians practice 3 to 4 hours a day for 10 years to reach mastery. So the question is, do you think 10-hour rule is a myth or is it a valuable guideline? Why or why not? Let's hear your opinions out there, guys. So do you think the 10,000 hour rule is a myth or is it a valuable guideline? Why or why not? Maribon, why they're putting their comments in. What do you think? 10,000 hour rule, myth, or is it valuable guideline to go by?
I think it's a valuable guideline. I mean, there's, a lot of opinions. It's interesting. So as I mentioned, I did some research, and I'll throw out a few more stats. So our friends at Top Tennis Training, they said 2,500 to 3,000 reps for the average person. If you're not as talented, 5,000. If you're very talented, 500 to 600 reps. Again, I didn't hear any like scientific, references from them, but it's just interesting to hear. And then another really interesting answer from Nick Bollettieri. He was asked, how can I hit like Monica Seles? And he said, at the academy, she went out and hit ball after ball after ball. She would hit 500 to 1,000 balls, all working on just one shot until she had it perfected. Not just good, but perfected. To hit like her, I would suggest you do the same. And then in terms of maybe like more of a non-rep answer, the one article that I read that I can link in here if you're interested. It's pretty long, but this person said, most everything I read indicates a 3-week period of at least every other day of practice is required. However, you can achieve definite benefit by training for a shorter period of time, but like more frequently as well. But to permanently improve the odds to elevate your game, it takes concentrated practice on one shot in a concentrated period of time for probably around 3 weeks of every other day. So some interesting other opinions there.
Absolutely. What
Yeah.
happened to my Alcaraz? What happened to my Alcaraz?
Go to the back button.
I want Alcaraz.
You might have to search. I can read some comments out while you search.
Well,
Christine.
actually,
Oh,
no.
sorry.
I mean, go ahead. Read comments.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So some say, okay. Christine Bolletary said 3,000 and 9,000. Hey, Sissel, I translate the 10,000 rule as consistency. Keep going no matter what. Let's see. Excellent comment, Frank, and also as to paddle. I learned paddle in 20 minutes and then so bored. This proves 10,000 hour rule. Gordon thinks it's a myth. Let's see. Christine, Archie, Dan Smith summarizes all the research on muscle memory in his book, Muscle Memory and Imagery, Better Tennis. Oh, that sounds like a good one to read. There's some more, but yeah, go ahead, Pete. I'll let you take over.
Well, a couple things. We're going to get into so we're talking about, how long does it take? Now we're going to talk about proven models of practice to, I think, you apply the 10,000 hour rule. But you've said it, I've said it, the comment section said it. I want people to comment, what does it mean? What does muscle memory mean to you? Until I read the talent code, I didn't really have a very good understanding of what muscle memory is or how it works or why it's so powerful. So, guys, comment below, what is muscle memory? Oops, sorry. What does muscle memory mean to you? Maribon, what does muscle memory mean to you? What does it mean when you hear the word muscle memory?
Yeah, so what I gathered from, the research, it's basically, you know, it's the ability of all your neural systems to, fully integrate what you've learned, and then to be able to perform that rep without thinking about it. So basically unconscious, repetition of what you've learned.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I like that. So we have Irv here says perfect practice makes perfect to make the myelin. Okay, so
Myelin.
yeah, so again,
Scientific.
guys, read the talent code, and I know I'm probably not saying this perfectly. How a doctor would explain it. So give me a little bit of leeway. I am a tennis coach, okay?
Dr. Freeman.
But what I interpreted after reading the talent code is that this muscle memory is revolves around this whole concept of myelin, and that you build the myelin, and it's basically a conductor that works from your brain down through your neural pathways. And the more you do it, this conductor gets thicker and thicker. So the more you do something correctly or incorrectly, it's going to shoot that message, very fast and very accurate, so you don't have to think about it, so that you can just do instead of think. And that's how we want to be able to do things. But the problem, when you take this concept, because you want to do things fast, you want to do things accurate. Like when I'm hearing this, I'm going, great. I want to hit a 100-mile-an-hour serve. I want to crush forehands. I want to play fast. I want to play big without even thinking about it. But as you read the talent code, you realize it actually takes doing things very slowly in the beginning, thinking a lot about it to where it's almost painful. You do have to overthink in the beginning. And so we're going to read some things here on the best practice models on how to develop this muscle memory, this myelin buildup, so you can basically fire signals faster throughout your body. But I want to take you guys through the 4 learning steps, which is basically unconscious incompetence. That's number 1. So number 1 is you don't know what you don't know. Like, it's basically like somebody said, hey, you want to go play tennis? You're like, what is that? I never heard of it. So then somebody tells you what tennis is and what a forehand is, and you're like, oh, okay, now I know what tennis is, and I know what a forehand is, but I don't know how to do it. And then the next stage you got to go into is you got to go into where you're developing the conscious competence. And this is probably the hardest stage for most people, because this can last for a long time too. And I think you can get out of conscious competence and then go into unconscious competence, and then you have to go back for a while sometimes to conscious competence too. That's another frustrating thing, because you can lose a stroke for a while. But in the beginning, conscious competence, you got to do things very slowly. Now you're like, okay, I've got to think about it and I can do it. And the more you're willing in the beginning stages of conscious competence to not be in a rush to get it, to enjoy the process, to practice without hitting a ball and things like that, you're going to develop the stuff a lot faster. And then you're going to get to unconscious competence. So the four best practices to model is number one, deliberate practice, and that's talked about
Yeah.
in the talent code. Focus, goal-oriented practice with specific feedback and immediate corrections. Blocked versus random practice. I look at this as closed versus open, but blocked versus combining repetition drills, blocked, and we're about to watch a blocked practice right here. That's why I have this up on the screen. Versus random drills where things are more open and you've got to basically anticipate and react. That's important to mix the two. And then quality over quantity, emphasizing the quality of your practice sessions over the numbers of hours spent. And that's why I was saying, the 10,000 hour rule, I don't know if I agree that it's got to be that many hours. I think the amount of reps are important, but I think it's how focused you're doing it, how closely you're doing it together. And then I
Yeah.
like this one too, mental rehearsal. I think this is very powerful. There's studies of people who just visualize themselves making free throws for like 6 months, and they do better than people who are like practicing free throws. Visualizing techniques and strategies to enhance your physical presence. So, number one, here's a question I want to ask you, Maribon, and then I want to ask the audience. What practice model do you find most effective and why? Like, how do you typically practice? And do you prefer deliberate practice or do you believe in mixing in a bunch of random practices? So how about you? How do you like to practice?
Yeah, I like to practice, Pete, with a deliberate practice model and just focusing on one stroke for an extended amount of time. It's very interesting, and I'm glad you asked because the one study that I keep referring to that I read, it said this is really interesting. It says studies are highly suggestive that if you practice multiple different strokes, let's say forehands and backhands back to back during a practice, then you're disrupting at least in part what you just accomplished. So that's really interesting for me. I was thinking about that. Let's say if you practice your serves for half an hour and then you practice your backhands. We would think that that's an isolated, different strokes, but according to this research, so it's something to think about. Like obviously, maybe it's not a totally true, but according to what this individual has been studying, it seems to disrupt. But it does make sense from a standpoint of if you're trying to learn different technique on one stroke than another, then it might be like kind of confusing for you. And I think just the best approach overall is to really focus on the one stroke. And just like Nick said with Monica Seles, she would just do like 500,000 reps of one stroke for a long time. And so having that deliberate practice is the best. And it's very difficult. I've been trying to change my serve for many years now and try to perfect that. And it's all these USTA matches and like friends wanting to practice with you. And so there's a lot of things that can definitely interrupt the efficiency of you developing your stroke. But in an ideal world, what you do is just focus on the one stroke and just improve that and work on it very super diligently every other day, like I mentioned, for several weeks. And that would be like the ideal way to do it, but it's tough.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to show you guys this. I love this video, and hopefully you guys can see it well enough to see what's going on. Maribon, you can kind of let me know how's this coming across your end?
It looks pretty good. It's yeah, good. It's
So,
pretty good.
so this is
Yeah.
Carlos Alcaraz right here. You see, he's running. He's moving to different shot patterns. I love this right here. Notice he's got no racket in his hand. And having to throw the big medicine ball too. I think everybody should work with a medicine ball. Then you really understand how to use your hips and your legs for power. That
Oh
your
yeah.
arms kind of go along with it. So see
It's
that
huge.
first he had no racket. Then they put the racket in his hand. This is a great progression here of a focused, deliberate practice. Now, look, he's doing his shadow stroke. So he's working on his serve +1 play. Again, another practice swing. Lands, gets balance, boom. No wonder he can hit and recover and hit a shot. When's the last time anybody here watching this has done this drill? This guy's probably been doing this since he's been a little kid. See, now what's happening is they're then throwing a couple of balls there for him to hit. Again, another shadow swing, not even hitting a tennis ball. So we can just focus on his recovery and making those first couple of shots. And as we know how important this is, most points end within 4 balls. So super, super important to do. And we'll notice as he goes through this stuff, he'll start hitting more balls in succession and opening up practice. So we can see how things are opening up already here now that he's hitting ball after ball. But if you want to learn a new skill specifically, this is basically how you want to go about it. Is you want to start in its most simplistic form without a racket, and then without a ball, and then add in the ball, add in the racket, make it more complex. And the more you rinse and repeat, and especially in the beginning, like I just had a camp this weekend, and within about an hour and going over the stroke, I can pretty much get everybody, because I believe perfect technique takes training, not talent. And I think a lot of people think because strokes that are so nice are so beautiful that it requires a lot of talent. I don't think it requires a lot of talent, right? It doesn't take talent to stretch your arm out like this, right? And just by doing that, you look really good as a tennis player. But yet most recreational players, whenever I do a camp, this arm's all over the place. And where it goes after and during the hit is usually a mess for most people. To get people to have it move the correct way, it really doesn't take talent. It takes training. But it takes that diligence to film yourself over and over again, to do a bunch of shadow strokes, to do a bunch of hand feeds, and then to expect and understand, not be frustrated that when you start hitting with somebody else, the stroke is going to fall apart pretty quick. And then once you start playing points, you can pretty much forget about it. If you're on the beginning of the spectrum, your stroke is going to go pretty much right back to all the habits you had. Like, it's very interesting. When I run these camps, you can see the habits, like the underhand feeds, guys. This is what I want you to know, that this is, if you came to my camp, this is what would happen. The underhand feeds I feed you in round 1 would pretty much look like you look like when you're rallying for the most part. Most of those bad habits are there. Then after about an hour's worth of work, you can see those habits going away with underhand feeds. They'll go, and you'll be like, wow, that's awesome. And then when you go back to rallying, they'll show right back up, and it's not that the process hasn't worked. It's just that it's just way too early to expect that amount of change. You've really got to earn the new technique the more stuff opens up. And any thoughts on that? I know I've been talking a lot. So, but look who's here. Oh my God.
Oh. Yes.
Doing shadow strokes with no racket as players use a clutch fist. That's right. That's another. Oh, that's huge. 2-minute tennis, Ryan. You're right. You'll always see coaches talk with an open hand. Like they love to go eating lunch and they're showing you about tennis. And then the recreational player is always doing this. That is money. Oh, I'm going to knock this thing over. I got so excited. Ryan's on.
Oh, man.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I took way too much time. Way too much airspace. Go ahead, Miraban.
I'm confused. No, let me try to think. Yeah, I just, generally speaking, I think, shadow swings like we talked about is huge, and that can play into the number of reps that you need, and following that progression of different type of environments is really important. So, but yeah, definitely agree with everything you're saying right now.
Yeah, and another thing that's really hard is, like Miraban said, ideally you don't even want to mix up a forehand practice with a backhand practice and things like that. If you're trying to make a change, you should just do some work on the forehand. But realistically, we're like, okay, well, I'm not going to become a pro and I'm not going to quit all my leagues. So what do I do instead? What I'm asking you guys to do instead is way harder than I'm saying it. I understand that, right? They say it's easier said than done. You've got to, in the beginning, when you're learning new things, you've got to have amnesia when you go play your matches. Like, don't even pretend that you're learning how to hit a new serve. But again, when I run the camps, I hear from almost everybody as they're starting to play their matches, and they're saying, "Well, I was trying to think of X, Y, and Z," even though I said, "Don't think of X, Y, and Z because it's too early. It's not going to work. It's
Yeah.
not going to be there. You're just going to play worse." So in the beginning, you've got to learn to separate the two. If you're going to continue to play league matches, separate. Now, as you get maybe in month after month 1, 2, and 3, you can start to then think of these little tips that you've been working on, these little technical tips that you've been working on, to maybe just reminders that you can actually think about it and do in match play. But you don't want to get too much into that. I think the more you keep sprinting back to the closed environment and do that, it's just going to show up. And also think of the thing about this thing right here, this video with Carlos Alcaraz. If you get into watching the pros practice, you realize that this guy has already got perfect strokes, and him and his coach probably have like a bazillion micro progressions similar to this one. Like, tomorrow, the coach might do the same exact drill, or he might add in an extra wrinkle or bring out an extra tool. And there's this like a million steps that these guys can go through to do the most basic things. And then they end up then playing their practice matches and hitting for the day. So the more you can think about how many micro progressions can I fit in between the beginning of learning something and the end of playing a match, and you do all these like little steps, you're gonna get this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really tough. I mean, I guess the lesson learned here is, don't worry about it during your matches, but try to get in as many sessions as you can in a closed environment of
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. Well, what do you think? Can you do you think of new stuff and new things you're working on in matches, and how does that work for you? You still play a lot of matches.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I usually like in the beginning, I'll just tell myself, if you can try this, but I like don't think about it too much because like especially in the most serious matches, I actually like fully discard it. Actually, thinking about it now, like playoffs and stuff like that, or like clutch matches, I don't really think about it at all. But if it's just like a regular league match, I might actually think a little bit, like just try and see if you can do this new movement. But if not, it's fine. So
Mm-hmm.
that's generally my approach. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I go to what's super comfortable because I want to win, and then go back to practicing it later.
Yeah, which I think is fine.
Yeah.
Talent is what sets Carlito apart. He was great last year in the final, but even better now. He was amazing at Wimbledon this year. That final with Djokovic was. He is gifted and athletic and instinctive. You cannot deny his talent. Absolutely, you cannot deny his talent. And that's the thing. When when you watch Alcaraz practice like we just saw in that last video, anybody can do that, and it will benefit everybody. Um, but not anybody can, run like the wind outside the court and then hook the ball inside the line 90 miles an hour plus. That is talent, right? But it's also a lot of reps. It's a mix, and I would argue that maybe the most valuable talent that I notice high achievers have on the tennis court is they actually enjoy the practice that we just saw, Alcaraz doing. Like, I think Alcaraz
Yeah.
probably from a young age, like, enjoyed doing all these drills. Besides competing and winning on game day, he probably enjoyed a lot of these practice sessions that you're seeing him do here. So I think that is also a talent, is just the willingness and the enthusiasm to do things that a lot of people would say, okay, that's boring. Like, can we play a match now? You know?
Yeah.
So, mhm.
Yeah, I agree. Agree, man.
All right. Well, I think that's kind of all I have today. You guys have questions out there? Oh, somebody asked, what about footwork? And again,
Mm.
I think that's a good question. What about footwork and developing that and
Yeah,
developing your
just trying to
stroke?
think. I mean, I think it's very similar sort of thing. I know that I have some inefficiencies in my footwork. Like I notice, like sometimes on returns, I'm going sideways instead of like a bit more forward angled towards the ball. And yeah, I think that that's the same. And I'm glad you brought that up because that's like one of the most important parts of the game that everyone overlooks as opposed to strokes. But yeah, it's the same. I think in terms of developing, changing that footwork, just putting in that consistent practice, like we mentioned, maybe something like every other day for several weeks, and then noticing the difference and videotaping especially. Because yeah, that I think that's one of the footwork is probably one of the things that you don't realize the most of what you're doing. At least with the stroke, maybe you can kind of feel it. And yeah, it's funny when I videotape myself moving. I always think I'm faster than I am and more intense than what I am, and then I look on the video and I just slap my head and think, "Wow, I'm slower than I thought." So, but yeah, I don't see too much of a difference principle wise with footwork in terms of versus stroke technique.
Yeah, I think again, footwork is an art form. It takes repetition and train. I don't consider footwork foot speed. Like for example, I still consider myself to have pretty good footwork for a young man of my age, but I'm not fast anymore. Like so there's a big difference. And having good footwork technique is also going to, and I did a footwork challenge about a month ago, and I was reading comments from like Novak, Serena, and Roger. And what was interesting is when they talk about footwork, they're talking about being balanced and in control on your shots. When they talked about footwork, they say that's what allows you to do. They didn't talk about it allows you to get to this insane drop shot and hit this another amazing shot. Like that's speed. But footwork enables you to consistently get out of way of balls that are too close to you and create the spacing and just always being on balance to hit. Good footwork technique will do that. And again, like Maribon talked about earlier with the forehand versus the backhand practice, I think you want to kind of isolate the activities and then combine them. So some days, just working on footwork patterns, don't even worry about taking a pretend swing at it. Just making sure that
Yeah.
the footwork steps are right, just focusing all downstairs. Then you can practice a shadow swing with your footwork and doing the same pattern. Then a coach can throw a medicine ball to you and you throw the ball back. Then the coach can throw the ball underhand and then you do the same exact footwork pattern. Then the coach can go across the court. You see all these micro progressions, right? And feed it off their racket across the court. Then they can go to the baseline. Then you can start rallying with somebody, and maybe this footwork pattern is going to start showing up naturally when you have to go for a certain ball. And so it's all kind of the same development.
Mm-hmm.
See if we have any more comments. John McEnroe never enjoyed practicing, a talented guy. Yeah, but he enjoyed playing a lot of matches, and you're right. And it's interesting, but he also had very unique technique, didn't he? And I
Yeah.
loved watching. McEnroe is my favorite player to watch. Now, here's something. This is a good question for everybody, and it's one I've thought of. If McEnroe, because compared to the rest of the field, his technique was still very unique. Now, the technique
Mm-hmm.
has even been polished up today even more. So if McEnroe started out with the same technology, but kept his strokes the same and had this weird unorthodox style, would he make it on today's tour? And where would he be? Would he be number one? Would he be 10? Would he be 20? Would he be 50? Like with the technique he had, where would he end up on today's tour? What do you think,
Um,
Maribon?
yeah, I think like his game would still like he would still have a solid serve and volley game, and I think like doubles wise he'd do pretty well. But I just feel like the heavy ball would really give him a lot of trouble these days because like there people are hitting with so much RPMs these days, and I feel like to me his strokes would have trouble handling all that. So that's kind of my take on it. I know we've got some more old school players who'll probably defend a bit more, but like I know he still like plays senior tour stuff and like can do all right, but I don't think he would get it as high of a level. But then, obviously, like, and this question is like assuming that he keeps the same strokes as Peter said. Like maybe if he, changed his strokes, he could get back, to number one or whatever in this today's age. But keeping the same strokes, I don't think he would be able to be up there.
Would he even make it? Would he even be on the tour? Would he be in the top 128 in the world? Ooh, that's a
Yeah.
good question.
Wait, top 100, you said?
Yeah, would he be playing at the U.S. Open, or would we not even know who he is if he had the same technique? He gets to use the same string, the same racket technology of today, but he has the same stroke technique and the same game.
So the Santoro, I'm trying to think of some players like him. Like Santoro did very well. Santoro has like more of a touch game. I think he could be up there, but just not like he was like top 5, top 10. But he may be able to get up there, like top 100. Tough to say.
Christopher says his game adapted to any style, anytime. Gordon says no. Johnny would never got far with the continental grips, sadly. Jimmy Connors had unorthodox technique, but he perfected it with tons and tons of practice. That's
His was a bit more
absolutely true.
similar technique, to today than Johnny.
Okay, so my thought is I have mixed emotions because first of all, I was a huge McEnroe fan, but
yeah,
I did see McEnroe play at age 50 in a professional doubles tournament. And he was clearly, with his weird strokes, still the best player on the court.
Yeah, doubles.
Yeah. But still, we had the big serve. People had the big forehands.
Yeah.
Like he ate them up. And if you look at Lendl's strokes, I think Lendl would have been fine in today's game. I don't know how much you've watched old video of Lendl, but Lendl, to me, he's like him and Borg are like the father of modern tennis to me. And especially Lendl's strokes, even more modern than Borg's strokes. I think Lendl would have been fine. And that was a tough phase for McEnroe because 83 and 84, McEnroe seemed to somehow figure out Lendl's power and dominate with the same style, with his weird strokes versus Lendl's advanced technique and heavy topspin, and he hit the crap out of the ball, Lendl. But I do think as the years went on, 85, Becker, I can remember coming in, 86, 87, 88, Lendl, Becker. Then all of a sudden, Agassi started to squeak in there. And I think the biggest thing that hurt him is what Gordon talked about, is that continental grip. He wasn't able to control the ball. It wasn't that, they just hit a bunch of winners against him. He couldn't chase balls down. It was that he couldn't keep the ball in play long enough to really, hurt those guys. Now, was he the same player that he was in 83 and 84? I don't know, but I don't know. I think it's very interesting. I could see him, champions adapt, and he was a once in a lifetime player. So I could see him somehow figuring it out, but I could also see him when you go to the practice court, like Indian Wells or Cincinnati or the US Open, and you see somebody who's like 300 in the world hitting the crap out of the ball. I'm like, I don't know how McEnroe would have dealt with that ball.
Exactly.
So,
that's what I was...
yeah, I don't know. McEnroe's serve wasn't huge with MPA. He had great placement. Yeah. I think if you want to look at what McEnroe's capability at his height, like how fast he was, and probably the best chance he would have had is 1984 U.S. Open. Watch him play Connors. Watch him play Lendl. Watch those two highlight videos. And there's a part of me that goes, man, that serve I think is still acing people. The way Federer got credit for the saber, the saber attack and how he disrupted play.
Yeah,
McEnroe invented that, and he was way better at that than. And I love Federer. Federer's most talented ever, but he was way better at that than, Federer ever was. So, yeah. But anyway, cool stuff. True that, Gordon. Today's top three are power. Well, I think it's I think today too. What do you think about that? Is today just all about power? When you think about today, what? And then I want to go into something I heard Andy Roddick say. What do you think about today? Is this all about power?
I wouldn't say all about power. I mean, certainly it's increased quite a bit since decades ago, especially with the racket tech and whatnot. And but I do think it's a ton of tactics, a ton of placement. And I was talking to David Ramos from USCA, the facility, the main campus to trains the top American players, and he was doing like a highly concentrated like tactical analysis of like a match of a player that the USA player was going to play the next day. And so it was a ton about that as well, still, strategy and placement and variations and stuff. So I think it's increased practice, but still a ton of tactics, and not necessarily the biggest hitter is winning. I'm certainly, having a huge weapon like Carlos has, or multiple weapons will help, but I wouldn't say it's all power.
Here's a good comment, which is so true. Many of the top men, which makes it scary, which makes Alcaraz so scary, are using drop shots and
Yeah.
slice compared to 10 years ago. And that's what makes Alcaraz so scary. I mean, that guy can haul, and he's so good at disguising. He can haul off and hit the forehand 100 miles an hour, or
Yeah.
he can hit the drop shot just like, so close to the net and so delicate. And so that brings me to something I heard First of all, Andy Roddick's podcast is awesome. Um,
Mm.
you got served or served, whatever he calls it. Anyway, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
fantastic. And he was talking about after the French Open final that even compared to when he was playing, the game has changed so much. He said, when I played, you could have a weakness or two and still be very, very strong on tour. He said today you cannot have a weakness. Your footwork has to be excellent. And I think also stroke technique is much more standardized. You almost don't. There is no real individual styles. Like everybody's kind of in the same model. Everybody kind of does the same thing on their forehand, on their backhand, where they got a forehand topspin, a backhand topspin, a one-hander. It all looks pretty similar. Now you can tell people's different strokes, but trust me, go watch tennis in the 70s and 80s. It was so much more unique the way people were hitting the ball from player to player. But they do everything awesome. They serve awesome. They return awesome. They play offense amazing. They play defense amazing. And they hit approach shots incredibly. And they also are a lot better volleyers than we give them credit for. I think that they're legit. There's like no weakness from anybody in the top 100 on either the men's or the women's side. Like I'll say that for men and women. Maybe the women not as good as volleyers, but I can't think of any male playing in the top 100 who I wouldn't say, man, their volleys are awesome. Their drop shots awesome. Their forehands like.
Mm.
Can you think of anybody where you could say McEnroe's toss and backhand sucked? Like you could say that, and you're right. You can't say that about anybody today.
Yeah, today, yeah. At one point, I felt like Federer's backhand was kind of off. He was missing. I also felt the same about that with Sampras for a little bit too, but it was not a long period. I feel like so. Yeah, overall, no.
Mm-hmm. Who are we watching
Yeah.
here? Who's this? Oh,
Roddick
Andy
and
Roddick
Ferrero.
versus Ferrero. Yeah,
Yeah, I
pretty
saw
interesting.
Gilbert in there too.
Yeah. I just think you got to be able
Nice.
to do everything well. Anyway, this is a really good conversation.
Yes,
Um,
indeed.
yeah,
No,
so
yeah.
I think that's good. Do you have anything else? Any other pearls of wisdom you'd like to give the audience before we take off?
Yeah, I'm putting in the article just I like to share stuff. So this is the article that I read, and I think it's a really good read, and it'll help you all. So, yeah,
Cool.
definitely check that one out. But yeah, like we said, just having that concentrated practice. I think a trap that we fall into is we learn something, and maybe we even practice it for like 2-3 days, in a row or something, and then we feel like, oh, we got it, but that's not enough. If you just think you got it after a few days, that's not correct according to all the research and the experiences as well from us. So you're going to go back. So you really need that concentrated, deliberate practice, but of decent amount of time of several weeks, like we were talking about as well. And so make sure you don't fall into that trap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's the other thing. I'll just leave everybody with this. So number one, I think everybody on this call, if you really dedicate the time, and it wouldn't kill you. I know you're all adults. I think everybody with your schedule, you could develop perfect technique on every stroke, especially in a closed environment, which would help you in an open environment. And I think the trick becomes, first of all, not expecting too much too early to show up in your matches. And then once it does, is to not be delusional to think that you can hit it in as many situations as pros can. Even though you might have, if you are a 4-0 or 3-5 at your club and you have the most beautiful forehand at your club, you still will not be able to use it all the time, which can really hurt you in match play. So you've got to again understand that the more selective you are at bringing out something that would be advanced. Let's say advanced is getting here and a semi-western grip and just ripping a topspin cross court like with all your power, right? You can't do that for 2 out of 3 sets. No matter how many reps, you're just never going to be able to catch up with the pros. So that's where I'm kind of like a little bit, I guess, of a party pooper. I'm like, you could develop perfect technique just like the pros, but you're never going to catch up to the amount of high level coaching they've had, the amount of balls they've hit, their youth. You're not going to get that. So you just have to learn how to be more selective when you use technique that is superior to all your friends. And if you don't learn how to be selective and know when to use it, you are going to lose the people who look like they can't even tie their shoes. But if you learn how to use it at the right time, you're going to smoke people all day long. That's the biggest trick, I think, for people out there.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thanks, Peter. Uh, if you don't mind, I just want to read like my favorite like muscle memory laws that I got from this article.
Ooh, muscle
So
memory laws. Yes.
yeah, so there's 7 of them, but the 4 that I like the most are: muscle memory is the result of permanent changes in the brain, nerves, and muscles. That's law 2. Law 3: permanent changes occur through repetition in a concentrated period of time. Law 4: repetition by doing it right in practice is how you hit good strokes during a match. And then the last one that I like, law 7: the temporary improvement that occurs during practice or matches should not be considered learning, but rather a transient performance effect. And that's the previous point I made about like, you may feel like you got it after a few days, but you need that concentrated learning. So those were the laws that stuck out to me that I really liked.
Oh, that's very good. People ask, where is that article? So, guys, if you scroll up, look at the Tennis Files comment and it says great article. That's where it is. So, I'm putting that right there
Thanks.
so you guys can all see it. But if you go up and you scroll up, that is where the article is. So, very
Thank you,
good. Well,
Peter.
Maribon, thank you so much for joining us. I think you did an excellent job, and
Thanks,
always
mate.
good to chat with you. And I'm looking forward next weekend, doubles confidence camp.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it's in a weekend, next weekend. That's
I
crazy. So
know
I'm loving that.
it is
And
crazy.
and I'm actually gonna fear for my life because we will be in Atlanta where Dr. Kovacs is. So he's probably gonna watch this video and then hate me and then try to put a hit out on me when I'm there.
Hmm. That's
My
right.
gosh. Oh no.
And hey, guys, if you have not signed up yet for the 5-day Think Like a Pro Mental Toughness Challenge, we're starting on Monday. We're going to be going live every day at 9 a.m. And I think I'll have to finish up on Monday, though. We're going to go Monday to Thursday, then take a day off because Maribon's coming in town. Or maybe I'll get it in. I'm not sure. But we'll definitely get all 5 days in. And you can sign up for free. If you want permanent access to it, you can always upgrade to lifetime because the way it works is like all my challenges is you get to sign up, you'll be on the live streams with us. The live streams are just going to be up for a limited amount of time. And then if you want the live streams will then be added to your library so you can refresh and go over them over and over again. Monday is going to be about handling nerves, conquering your nerves. That's day 1 of the mental toughness challenge. So I hopefully you guys will join us or join me. on Monday. Maribon's not going to be here.
Yeah. And somebody
But
asked for the link for the challenge.
Well, I can't quite put that right in here right now, but if you just are on my email list, just I've been sending it out like every other day. So search through my emails, and then I will also be sending an email tomorrow. I'm going to give you 3 mental toughness short clips I made yesterday that I'm going to share with my email list. I think are pretty good. So you'll be looking for my email tomorrow. You get free content on 3 mental toughness tips, and then it will show you how to easily sign up for the challenge. All
Cool.
right. All right, guys.
Awesome.
We'll let Maribon get out of here. He's got like a real job. I don't. I can just do this all day, but Maribon's actually got a real job. See you guys.
It's fine. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Pete.